With the golden finger, which allows players to acquire character skills and items, Huo Mingjie's gaze shifted to the flourishing martial arts, immortal, and supernatural dramas of this era. Divine Diao, Fengshen Bang, Strange Stories from Liaozhai, Legend of Lu Xiaofeng, Jingwei Reclamation. A few years later, Huo Mingjie, jokingly known as the savior of vase acting and often appearing in the entertainment industry under the name ex-boyfriend of a certain actress, turned extremely pale. The Chuanjin heart technique can only provide health benefits, the golden goose technique can jump a little higher, and the Shu mountain sword technique cannot fly at all. I understand that due to differences in worldview, the effectiveness of skills has been compromised, but there's no need to be so much worse than in the script, right? At this point, Huo Mingjie became increasingly angry and shouted. Also, even though some of them find it difficult to express their acting skills in words, why do they suddenly get too deep into the play and their acting skills explode when they meet me? After I finished filming, I was relentlessly beaten up and then labeled as a scumbag. Isn't that a bit unfair? Keywords of the novel. They are all deeply involved in the play. No pop-ups, they're all too deeply involved in the show. Download the complete set of TXT, they are all too deeply involved in the drama. Latest chapter reading. Chapter 1, please focus on actual experience. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1, please focus on actual experience. This story is purely a fictional story of parallel time and space, with slightly different timelines. If the characters overlap with reality, it is purely a coincidence. The morning mist curls up in the mountains, enveloping the forests. In the distance, the peaks are arranged in a ring, majestic, with ancient trees towering in the sky, a secluded environment, and a picturesque scenery. Amidst the hazy mist, a man dressed in a Taoist robe and with a bun on his head stood by the railing. There was a white mist between his mouth and nose that persisted for a long time, as if he was practicing meditation. From a distance, his clothes fluttered and accentuated his immortal aura, as if he was about to transform into an immortal in the next moment. But at the next moment, the Taoist suddenly raised the flip top of his hand and shouted to the other end. "Hello, hello, hello, can you hear me?" The phone and the Taoist's attire and surrounding environment were out of place, instantly bringing the art style back to reality from the perspective of cultivating immortality and immortality. On the other end of the phone, there was a slightly electric noise response. "Hey, I heard it. Second uncle, the signal on your end is also too bad." Upon hearing these words, Huo Mingjie looked up at the magnificent scenic area surrounded by towering ancient trees and distant peaks. In this era where infrastructure is not yet in place, sometimes the signals in the city are not very good, let alone in the deep mountains of Yendang Mountain. "Uncle, I just heard from a friend that your crew had an accident. Did a little girl fall into a waterfall, or did you jump down and rescue her? You didn't get any injuries, did you?" the other end of the phone asked nervously. Upon hearing this, Huo Mingjie couldn't help but roll his eyes and angrily said. "It all happened a few months ago, and you only found out when the filming location changed. You, as an agent, are not qualified either." Upon hearing this, the other end of the phone paused for a moment and then coughed. "For the past 2 months, I have been busy helping Uncle Air find a way to get your character." The nephew across the phone clearly felt a bit embarrassed about his incompetence. "Cough cough, if it's okay, it's okay. I've heard that little girl has some backstage. Uncle, you've gained some favor by saving people this time, maybe you can." Upon hearing this, Huo Mingjie's expression immediately became depressed and he interrupted directly. "Don't think about this anymore. This little girl seems to be a bit too deeply involved in the drama. She's always guarding me like a pervert." Huo Mingjie touched his face while speaking. From childhood to adulthood, relying on this face, he has never been at a disadvantage in front of the opposite sex, even the neighbor's little flower dog has taken this trick. This is the first time in my life that I have encountered such a cold reception. When others play the role of Dragon Knight, they often play the role of a fairy girl by chance. Why am I acting and being guarded like a pervert? Upon hearing Huo Mingjie's words, the other end of the phone was clearly stunned. After thinking about his second uncle's handsome face, which was so pitiful that he felt extremely absurd, Huo Mingjie shook his head and said, "Anyway, I've already finished all my scenes and I'm afraid I won't meet you again in the future. When will you come to Yendang Mountain to pick me up?" Upon hearing these words, the other end of the phone suddenly remembered the main matter and hurriedly said, "Coincidentally, I just found a character for you through some means. Although this part is not too many, the character design and plot are still good. It's still the kind of fantasy drama you prefer. Let's seamlessly join the group." Huo Mingjie doesn't have much fame yet, to be precise, his first role has just been completed. Apart from this face, there is nothing else to show, so naturally there is no choice. Even if there aren't many scenes, he still has to go in order to obtain character settlement skills. After explaining a few more words, Huo Mingjie hung up the phone, but did not immediately pack up and leave the crew. In the sight that only he could see, a line of small characters immediately appeared in front of him. Character Zhenjibing, in The Legend of Condor Heroes, has been finalized and is currently being settled. Part ratio B+, although your part ratio is not too much, it is impressive. Years or even decades later, when I think of you, countless people still grit their teeth in hatred. Performance evaluation C+, as the first character in life, your acting skills are still qualified. Driven by the female lead's explosive acting skills, your performance also delves deeper into the character. Comprehensive evaluation B. Huo Mingjie's lips twitched slightly as he looked at the evaluation of his acting skills this time. To be honest, apart from the later drafts and fan speeches, few people use the term explosive to describe the acting skills of this fairy girl. What's the point of my current acting skills being so poor that I even need her to lead? According to the comprehensive evaluation, you will draw 2 rewards from the skills and items of the character, Zhenjibing, extracting. Extracting. Obtain skill. Chuanjin Mind Technique. This is the basic mind technique of Chuanjin sect that appears in Jin Yong's novels. It is pure and simple, and runs continuously while walking, sitting, and lying, with an endless flow. Obtain skill. Golden Wild Goose Skill, a Chuanjin sect lightness skill that appears in Jin Yong's novels. Although it is a basic lightness skill, it has the effect of assisting in cultivating internal power. The high-level realm can move in the air. Special reminder, due to different worldviews, there may be slight differences in skill effects. Please refer to actual experience for details. B.level evaluation. It seems that you can only obtain the most basic skills from 2 deductive characters. Otherwise, the Dragon Knight would at least be able to inherit the position of the head of the Chuanjin sect. Apart from innate skills, other advanced Chuanjin martial arts such as the 1 Qi transformation, 3 cleanliness and frost-breaking palm technique are still proficient. But for the first time, Huo Mingjie was quite satisfied. After choosing to claim the reward, in an instant, Huo Mingjie felt a warm current about the thickness of a hair gushing out of his body from the elixir field, running continuously within his body without stopping for a moment. Every time he ran around, he felt extremely warm and comfortable all over, even dispelling a bit of the winter morning chill in the mountains. Huo Mingjie was a bit excited and sighed, saying, "If it weren't for acquiring such extraordinary skills, why would I have given up on the idol drama, second actor, next door, who earns 300,000 yuan, and come here to play the role of Dragon Knight?" Feeling the magic of Chuanjin internal skill, he couldn't help but glance down at the railing. This high platform, built specifically for the filming crew, is about 3 to 4 meters above the ground. After hesitating for a moment, Huo Mingjie couldn't help but feel restless in his heart. Seeing no one behind him, he simply climbed over the railing and jumped off the high platform. The warm current in its body circulates under its feet, and its feet are just empty spots, as if borrowing strength from nowhere, and its body shape rises several tens of centimeters in the air. The Taoist robe fluttered, emitting the sound of the collar breaking through the air, as if a banished immortal had descended to earth to ride the wind. At the next moment, a sudden cry of surprise could be heard from below. Huo Mingjie's internal breathing was interrupted by the sudden exclamation. The body suddenly froze and landed suddenly, but stumbled and almost fell to the ground. The smug and joyful expression on his face just now also stiffened. Feeling the numbness in his legs and the slight pain in his knees, he finally understood why there was a special reminder just now, saying, "Please focus on actual experience. What kind of golden goose skill, what kind of flying in the air, and that's the result." End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Are you all right? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Are you all right? Huo Mingjie stood frozen in place, only to ease his numb legs and feet. A nasal sound sounded from behind, sounding a bit coquettish and gentle, and cautiously said, "Well, are you okay?" Lulu Mei. Huo Mingjie turned his head and saw a little girl wearing a down jacket standing behind him. Her big eyes, with a hint of curiosity, were scrutinizing behind him, as if she wanted to reach out and see if there was an invisible way hanging. "Oh, by the way," Huo Mingjie almost forgot. This version of Guoxiang is still full of spiritual energy and has not yet evolved into a big secret. I was too excited just now, but I didn't notice that there was still a person squatting under the high platform. No, we can't make her realize something's wrong. With a movement of his eyes, Huo Mingjie immediately revealed his handsome face at a 45-degree angle, and his mouth curved to reveal a bright and gentle smile, saying, "It's okay, I'm just practicing parkour. Thank you for your concern." Huo Mingjie's smile has always been favorable, giving people a dazzling feeling in a daze. The little girl started working on the set at the age of 4, what scenes have she never seen before? But the impact of Huo Mingjie's brilliant smile was too great. Even with the little girl's insight, she couldn't help but feel a bit confused and her heart suddenly stopped for a moment. The little girl's face blushed slightly, and her eyes instinctively lowered, afraid to look at each other. Her voice seemed to have become even more coquettish. "Parkour, you're really amazing." At this moment, the little girl who was enchanted by beauty had already ignored the miraculous performance of Huo Mingjie soaring into the air without any help, and subconsciously agreed with the excuse made up by Huo Mingjie casually. Huo Mingjie deliberately used beauty to deceive the young girl, feeling a bit uneasy. He couldn't help but cough lightly and said, "My name is Huo Mingjie, yes." "Well, I know. Your name is Huo Mingjie, and we are on the same crew. Although we don't have any opposing scenes, I know you," the little girl continued. "Guoxiang and the Dragon Knight, where did they come from?" With such a large crew, staff, actors, assistants, and so many people performing in groups, Huo Mingjie had never noticed this little girl before. However, the little girl knows Huo Mingjie and even knows his name. After all, less than half a day after he joined the group as a freshman, he just smiled in front of others and made all the female members on the crew remember him. The little girl stroked her hair somewhat unnaturally and said, "My name is Yang Mi." Huo Mingjie chuckled and said, "I also know you, Xiao Guoxiang. I even noticed you in Su Qier's movies before." Upon hearing this, the little girl's eyes lit up and she looked at Huo Mingjie with some surprise, saying, "How do you recognize me?" How did Huo Mingjie recognize her at a glance in that movie, where her image only flashed by and was filmed at the age of 4 or 5? Although it was just casual flattery, looking at the surprised look in the little girl's eyes, Huo Mingjie couldn't help feeling a little guilty and coughed lightly. "I feel like I recognized it all at once. It's not until a few years later, I don't know if it's a fan or a studio who bought the manuscript. With that fleeting image, I dare to brag that you're an old actor, otherwise ghosts will recognize you. Do you feel it?" Listening to Huo Mingjie's words, the little girl's eyes sparkled, and she felt that the young man in front of her made people want to be close. Huo Mingjie's scalp was slightly numb, and his experience from childhood to adulthood told him that if he didn't leave again, the trouble would only be even greater. He came to film, not to pick up girls. Thinking of this, Huo Mingjie scratched his head, but quickly tugged at his Taoist robe and said, "Well, I have to go and return my clothes." As soon as the little girl nodded, Huo Mingjie had another bright smile on his face. He turned around and hurriedly left while the little girl was once again confused, leaving the little girl standing there feeling lost and wondering if he would take the initiative to ask for a phone call or something next time we meet. Returning to the props and clothing group, Huo Mingjie handed in his robe and wig without hesitation. Several masters from the prop group squatted on the side, looking at Huo Mingjie with a wooden face who came to return the props. The little sister who was just transferred from the clothing group took Huo Mingjie's Taoist robe with a smile on her face and spoke fluently. "Let me help you wash it this time." Upon hearing this, Huo Mingjie smiled and shook his head, saying, "Thank you, sister, but I have already finished the cast this morning, so I don't need it anymore." "Is it done?" The little sister from the clothing group's smile paused, and a look of disappointment appeared in her eyes. On the contrary, several prop group men squatting beside them heard this, and their originally wooden faces immediately showed a hint of surprise with a smile. "Is this kid finally leaving?" "Okay." Huo Mingjie took out a small gift he had prepared and handed it to the little sister in the clothing group. He smiled and said, "A worthless little gift, thank you for taking care of me during this period, sister." The young lady from the clothing group received the gift and immediately showed a bright smile on her face, which made the person from the props group beside her straighten their eyes and grit their teeth with envy and jealousy. At this moment, a prop group brother had a slight feeling and couldn't help but shake his head, whispering, "To be honest, this kid knows everything and is born to eat this bowl of rice." Someone next to me heard this, but their tone was eerie. Actually, as long as this kid wears this face, no matter how low his emotional intelligence is, he can still eat this bowl of rice. The older brother suddenly fell silent and reached out to touch his rough face, nodding in agreement with a bitter smile. After returning the props and costumes, I greeted the film director, assistant director, and several key actors. After expressing gratitude to the fashion group, makeup group, and field staff who have been taking good care of themselves for a while, Huo Mingjie left the production team with his packed luggage. His nephew Huo Chang'e has just called and will soon come to the entrance of the production team to pick him up. It was said to be Huo Mingjie's nephew, but because Huo Mingjie was adopted by someone, in fact, Huo Chang'e is actually one round older than him, almost 30 years old this year. Huo Chang'e had been working in Hengdian for a long time, first performing in groups, then leading in groups, and even joining many production teams to do odd jobs. Because he is versatile and knows how to get things done, he has formed a lot of connections. During the Spring Festival last year, Huo Chang'e went back to his hometown to say whatever he wanted. Just now, he persuaded the stubborn old man to bring his cheap uncle out for filming and became a broker. Although he doesn't know any big shots, Huo Chang'e also has a few friends who are doing well. Huo Mingjie was able to directly join the production team of The Legend of the Condor, thanks to the recommendation of his nephew, who is a casting director on the set. In the past few months, he has not been with Huo Mingjie and has also set his sights on a production team, hoping to push Huo Mingjie into it. He also knew that his connections were not really much, and he couldn't get any lead roles. He just wanted to fight for a slightly outstanding role and make Huo Mingjie look familiar. After all, everyone understands that as long as Huo Mingjie is not disfigured with this face, he is actually only one chance away from blushing. After multiple attempts by Huo Chang'e, Huo Mingjie finally got a role. After leaving the crew of The Legend of Condor, he will be rushing non-stop to Xinjiang. End of this chapter. What do I have about Chapter 3's transformation into a male demon? You are listening at novelfull.audio. This translator is experiencing an error, please try another translator. Chapter 4. New script, Jingwei Reclamation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 New script, Jingwei Reclamation. After a moment, a blush appeared on the cheeks of the heavenly immortal little girl, and she struggled to look away before pretending to be grand and straightforward. "Leave a phone number, let's keep in touch in the future." Huo Mingjie looked at the celestial little girl with a greatly changed attitude, and his eyebrows twitched, feeling uneasy. The originally slightly upturned corners of the mouth suddenly closed, and the brilliant and dazzling smile was like a daisy, beautiful and fleeting. He instinctively reached out and touched the corner of his mouth, whispering, "I probably didn't laugh just now. No, what's wrong with this little girl? She used to avoid herself when she was on the set. Are you looking for contact information now that you're all leaving?" I waited for a while, but I didn't receive a response from Huo Mingjie. The heavenly immortal little girl glanced up and saw that he looked unusually unwilling, and her face suddenly stiffened. At the age of 17 or 18, a little girl who has been held up by her family since childhood naturally has inexplicable self-esteem. Don't give it. It's okay if you don't give it. Alright, actually I don't really want it. Hahaha, my mother is very strict with me and has never liked me to have too much contact with others. The fairy girl's face collapsed and she held her head high, forcefully supporting herself. Her eyes flickered slightly, pretending to unintentionally scan Huo Mingjie's face, and she remembered her attitude towards others during this period. The anger she had just mentioned suddenly burst out again. "Well, really, don't you give me a phone number? We're about the same age, maybe we can work together in the future." The little girl's eyes flickered, and her tone was weak. With a twitch of his mouth, Huo Mingjie took out his smartphone and said helplessly, "Where's your phone number? I'll call you." The little fairy girl, who was originally carrying a small face, smiled as she reached into her down jacket pocket to pick up her phone and explained, "Let me call you, I can't remember my phone number." After a moment, the little girl's expression froze again, and then she groped around in several pockets of her clothes with some uncertainty. Upon seeing her appearance, Huo Mingjie spoke up and asked, "Didn't you bring it?" The little girl flattened her mouth, looked innocent, and replied in a milky voice, "It seems like I really forgot to bring it." At this moment, the car window of the dilapidated Santana behind me suddenly rolled down. Huo Mingjie struggled to shake the car window handle, then pulled at the corner of Huo Mingjie's clothes and timely handed over a pen and paper. Finally, he smiled at the fairy girl before shaking the window again. Huo Mingjie looked at the paper and pen stuffed into his hand and couldn't help but glance at Huo Mingjie, who was struggling to roll up the car window. Seeing the timely delivery of the paper and pen, he knew that this rundown car couldn't be considered soundproof. Huo Mingjie could hear it clearly from sitting in the car, and closing the car window was simply taking off his pants and farting. Huo Mingjie turned his head and saw the fairy girl with bright eyes, looking at him eagerly. He frowned and lowered his head to write down his own phone number, then handed it to the little girl. The little girl happily took it over and smiled, saying, "Alright, I'll call you later." Huo Mingjie nodded and politely said, "Contact me again in the future." After speaking, Huo Mingjie turned around and opened the rear door, sitting inside. The heavenly immortal little girl waved goodbye, with a smile like a flower, exuding a pure innocence and ignorance of a young girl. It inexplicably gave people a feeling of being easy to deceive and give away, forming a sharp contrast with her slightly guarded posture when she first arrived. The worn-out Santana's body shook, and a wisp of black smoke emanated from behind its buttocks before slowly driving. Huo Mingjie glanced at the rearview mirror and saw the immortal little girl standing next to the road behind him who had not left. He couldn't help but chuckle and explain. "Miss Liu has just appeared as a female lead in several major productions. It's not a bad thing to get to know her this time, maybe she can use it in the future." Speaking of which, he glanced at his second uncle's face again and coughed lightly, saying, "And I've also heard that Miss Liu's mother is very strict and probably wouldn't make any outrageous moves. Even if she did, you wouldn't be at a disadvantage." In fact, before joining the Divine Sculpture crew, Huo Mingjie had already been exposed to several characters. Originally everything went smoothly, but there were always some producers and investors who threw olive branches and wanted to personally take care of him. Well, although most of them are aunties, there are also uncles after Huo Mingjie firmly refused, although he had not yet reached the point of being banned, the roles that had already been set were also gone. It has been delayed for more than half a year, and with the help of Huo Qingyi's friend, he finally joined the current Divine Sculpture drama group and played his first role in his life. At this moment, Huo Mingjie shook his head and did not continue to dwell on it. Instead, his words changed and he asked, "By the way, what is the character this time?" Huo Qingyi breathed a sigh of relief when he saw that his second uncle had no intention of arguing with him. He quickly pulled out a not too thin script from the nearby storage box and handed it over. Huo Mingjie took it over and saw a note on the script that read, "Jingwei filling the sea. Lingzi. Jingwei Reclamation." Huo Qingyi nodded and proudly raised his eyebrows, saying, "Although I don't know why you are so optimistic about martial arts, immortal heroes, and supernatural dramas, this script completely meets your requirements. And the investment in this drama is not low either. It's not a grassroots team, and both the male and female protagonists have fame. Your role and character design are also good." Huo Mingjie pinched the script and reminisced for a while, only then could he barely recall a little. The screenwriter of this drama can be considered a genius, able to integrate many mythological stories such as Jingwei's Reclamation, Quafu's Pursuit of the Sun, Hui's Shooting of the Sun, and Xingtian's Struggle for the Throne, and basically achieve logical coherence. Shu's singing of Xiao Jingwei leaves a deep impression on people. And it seems that the movie, Baoyan Lantern, will be aired next year, when the little girl's fame will reach its peak. Just to tell the truth, he was still young when he saw the play, and his memory of the plot had been blurred. Except for the female owner Xiao Jingwei, he was not impressed, let alone one of the supporting role in the play. He opened the script and saw a rough introduction to the characters. The firefly, who cultivates into a demon under a ginkgo tree, calls itself the Dun Shen Lingzi, also known as the Bright Warcraft. It is one of the top 10 warcraft that emerged in the flood and is skilled in psychedelic spells. His psychedelic spells are powerless even to the villain Iha in the drama. Huo Mingjie's eyes lit up with a hint of emotion. Although the skill effects obtained by Golden Finger are greatly discounted, this is actually a character in a mythological background. Even if the effect is weak, it must be more powerful than the skills drawn from martial arts characters. He roughly flipped through the script again and couldn't help but say, "Yo, you're still a licking dog." Lingzi is infatuated with a poor country's female musician, but she loves her childhood sweetheart. And then childhood sweethearts like to have princesses from poor countries, and this princess also likes the male protagonist Ho-E. For the sake of this simple woman, Lingzi, who was originally very stubborn, bravely fought against the heavenly god and turned against the demon world. In the end, the vegetarian girl died in order to save her childhood sweetheart, leaving only her soul in the qin, constantly accompanying Lingzi. Well, how to put it? In the end, it could be considered licked, at least not without anything. Huo Qingyi has been by his second uncle's side for a long time, so he naturally knows the meaning of some witty words popping out of his mouth from time to time. He glanced at Huo Mingjie's face again through the rearview mirror, but suddenly couldn't help but laugh. "The plain girl in the script doesn't like you, Uncle Air, and I don't know if the actress who plays against you might be a bit guilty." End of this chapter. Has Sister Chang'e played this role in Chapter 5? You are listening at novelfull.audio. This translator is experiencing an error, please try another translator. I think Teacher Tao is right in Chapter 6. You are listening at novelfull.audio. I think Teacher Tao is right in Chapter 6. He instinctively opened his eyes and saw that the people present were staring blankly at his face. Although Huo Mingjie has been accustomed to the stunning gazes of others since childhood, it is rare for everyone to lose their composure like today. He looked up at himself in the makeup mirror in front of him, feeling a wave of shock. At this moment, Huo Mingjie's 2 strands of hair were hanging down in front of his forehead, and a pair of sword eyebrows were raised in a straight line, standing upright like a blade. He also used an eyebrow brush to render a little red. Compared to the previous gentle and divine appearance, the design now has a slightly bold touch. With just a few slight changes, Huo Mingjie was immediately infused with a not too excessive evil aura, which is more in line with his identity as one of the top 10 Warcraft beasts in the script setting. If we talk about Huo Mingjie just now, he was handsome and gentle, and at a glance, he was incredibly stunning. Now he is gentle and handsome, with a hint of evil in him. The 2 temperament complement and blend together, like a black hole that attracts the attention of others, and even has a strange magic that cannot be moved away. Sitting beside her, Yan Yanchen noticed a strange atmosphere in the dressing room and couldn't help but look at Huo Mingjie. Just at a glance, she was also momentarily stunned, feeling a bit dazed. It took a while for her to recover. A little clear-headed, she felt like roast about the setting of the script. How could anyone not like such a handsome and affectionate Yinlingzi? What's going on? Why do I keep receiving scripts that are so unscrupulous? Even Huo Mingjie, who had been accustomed to being stared at by others since childhood, couldn't help but be slightly furrowed by the crowd in the dressing room. He quickly coughed lightly and asked. "Stylist, do you have any further questions?" Huo Mingjie's words finally brought the stylist girl back to her senses. Her eyes carefully scrutinized Huo Mingjie's current appearance, and her face showed an excited, joyful, and proud smile. She couldn't help but sigh. TSK, perfect, perfect. After feeling emotional and admiring for a while, Huo Mingjie felt a bit embarrassed when he was stared at. The makeup artist just smiled and said, "My name is Tao Huan, and I won't be as strict as a styling teacher in the future." "Alright, there's another set of designs here, let's confirm it again." Upon hearing this, Huo Mingjie quickly got up and hid in the adjacent changing room. It wasn't until the door to the dressing room closed that the rest of the people in the dressing room reluctantly withdrew their gaze. In 2004, due to the underdeveloped film and television industry and investment issues, apart from major productions like The Legend of the Condor Heroes, the costumes and makeup of other production groups were generally not qualified. Although this crew is not big now, it is still evident that they have put in a lot of effort. The clothing and makeup of the fire god and water god in the drama are quite unique and also in line with the character image. The male protagonist can change his outfit every time he upgrades, and the Dai Sheng on the head of the Queen Mother of the West is also one of the more sophisticated styles. Of course, as a small supporting role, Yinlingzi's clothes are not so careful. There are only 2 sets of clothing in total, one of which is a grey robe that I just tried on when I transformed into a mortal. And the other set is the silver armor when incarnating as a shining warcraft. That grey robe, although not particularly impressive, is still acceptable. But the other set of silver armor is really peculiar. It is said to be armor, but in fact, it is a cloud shoulder vest with some armor patterns on the outside, which looks like a crab belly shell at first glance, somewhat inexplicably cheap. When Huo Mingjie walked out of the changing room again wearing this outfit, Tao Huan's eyebrows furrowed tightly, showing a look of embarrassment and displeasure. As mentioned earlier, Huo Mingjie looks good wearing a burlap bag. This outfit doesn't look bad on him, but it doesn't match his face, it's a bit out of place. For such a disdainful beauty appearance, Tao Huan felt that he didn't look at it. He covered his forehead and waved his hand, saying, "I've taken it off, this outfit doesn't work. I'll think of another way." After speaking, Tao Huan didn't wait for Huo Mingjie to speak, so he turned his head to look at the following field affairs and asked, "Chenggu, when will the filming of Huo Mingjie's role start?" He just joined the group today, and the first scene can only be scheduled the day after tomorrow at the earliest. Speaking of which, Chen Nangang, the field manager, turned his head to look at Huo Mingjie and couldn't help but say, "Isn't that good? Why are you still tinkering? Don't delay filming." The directors from Hong Kong have quite strict requirements, and the production of this drama also involves the leaders of local film studios, which delays the process and is not good for Huo Mingjie. The following sentence was spoken by him to Huo Chang'e beside him. Huo Chang'e didn't say much, just looked at his second uncle. In fact, Huo Mingjie doesn't really want to be in the limelight. Generally, the supporting role of such a small drama group doesn't have to be specially modified. The crew has complex relationships, being too outstanding is not a good thing. Before Huo Mingjie could even refuse, Tao Huanhuan frowned and pondered as he spoke. I'll think of a way first. If it really doesn't work, then forget it. After speaking, Tao Huanhuan had already taken out his phone from his pocket and walked out with great enthusiasm, not knowing who to call. Watching her hastily leave, Huo Mingjie opened his mouth but didn't say anything, just silently sighed. Yan Yanchen, who was sitting next to him, heard Huo Mingjie's soft sigh and looked at the helpless expression on his face, feeling clear in his heart. In the crew, there is a mix of good and bad, and the human relationship is complex. It's easy to offend people with just a little something. Huo Mingjie, who is not very old and has such an eye-catching face, probably suffered some losses before. He is afraid that if he is too conspicuous, he will cause trouble. Yan Yanchen also knew that it was not easy for a young actor without a background. With a soft heart, he couldn't help but speak up to comfort him. Teacher Tao is like this, demanding high standards of her job and even appearing a bit stubborn. Everyone on the set knows her temperament and knows that it has nothing to do with you. Perhaps feeling a little pale just comforting like this, she turned around and looked directly at Huo Mingjie, saying. Teacher Tao also said that my hairstyle is not good, and my lipstick is too light to look pale. And this purple eyeshadow, which was much darker than this, was replaced by her for me with a slightly lighter one. She had a dispute with others about this matter before, always saying that this makeup is solely supported by my facial features, otherwise someone else wouldn't be able to handle it. Perhaps it was because she felt a bit boastful about her words, and she even smiled awkwardly. Huo Mingjie's gaze couldn't help but look towards her peaceful and gentle face. The 5 facial features are classical and elegant, with a reserved smile that exudes a gentle and elegant temperament. A pair of big eyes with a bright smile gives people a faint and charming feeling. After a moment, Huo Mingjie's gaze shifted away, and after a moment of serious contemplation, he nodded and said. But I think Teacher Tao's statement is very accurate. Yan Yanchen listened carefully to Huo Mingjie's words and blinked his long eyelashes a few times. It took him a while to reflect before he understood the meaning he was expressing. After a moment, the older sister covered her mouth and chuckled lightly, saying. You really speak. Seeing his eyebrows and eyes curved and his smile overflowing, it was obvious that he was quite impressed by Huo Mingjie's words. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. One Multimedia Message. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. One Multimedia Message. Yendang Mountain, on the set of Divine Eagle. The heavenly immortal girl, who had just finished filming a scene, was still wearing the white fairy-like long dress of Little Dragon Girl and ran back to her lounge with light steps. Aunt Lu, who returned to the lounge early, handed over the tea and said gently. Cece, please take a break for a while. I'll call you out later when it's time for your filming. The fairy girl nodded obediently and said. Then I'll take a break. At this point, the little girl's eyes blinked slightly, but she coquettishly said in a milky voice. I'm a bit hungry now. Mom, go help me get some food. Upon hearing these words, Aunt Lu said somewhat angrily. Eat less, gaining weight doesn't look good in front of the camera. The words on her lips were like this, but Aunt Lu helplessly touched her daughter's little head and turned away to get the food. Watching her mother leave the lounge, the fairy girl gave a sly smile and quickly jumped up to take out a note with Huo Mingjie's phone number from the pocket of the down jacket hanging beside her. After finding her own phone again, the little girl hesitated for a moment and murmured to herself. He seems to have joined a new crew again, he should be busy now. After thinking for a moment, the little girl didn't choose to make a phone call. Instead, she opened the text message interface and finished typing, "I'm Lu Qianqian." Just as she was about to press the send button, she suddenly paused and hesitated, muttering to herself. "Isn't it too arrogant to directly post like this?" Murmured to herself, and the little girl lowered her head again, clattering and typing a lot of words. But just after finishing the fight, the already mentally complex little girl, who was slightly conflicted and twisted, felt a bit too much. The interaction between the two was actually a bit awkward, although some grudges were untied before parting. But I didn't say a few words in the crew before, so I couldn't find any suitable topic. At this thought, the little girl frowned again and deleted all the words she had just typed. After careful consideration, the fairy girl picked up her most advanced and trendy phone with a built-in camera, took a photo of herself smiling more than a scissor hand, and directly sent a multimedia message to Huo Mingjie. A selfie not only indicates one's identity, but also does not appear too distant, nor is it a forced topic. "Hey, I'm so smart." Just as the fairy girl was secretly proud, the door to the lounge was pushed open from outside. Aunt Lu walked in and casually asked, "Zishi, have you seen the car key?" His mother suddenly returned, which startled the celestial being who had just been pondering the content of the text message. Subconsciously, he grabbed his phone tightly in his hand and stuttered, saying, Mom, why did you suddenly come back?" "I forgot to take the car key." Aunt Lu responded and immediately noticed her daughter suddenly showing signs of panic. Noticing something unusual, Aunt Lu's eyes froze and she noticed her daughter holding onto her phone tightly. She spoke up and asked, "What are you doing?" Nothing." The fairy girl's eyes were a bit flickering, and she spoke vaguely. Aunt Lu's eyes were slightly scrutinized, but suddenly she smiled slightly and said, "Can you lend me your phone for a while? Mom wants to make a phone call and ask the driver if they have a spare key." Although it sounded like seeking advice, Aunt Lu had already reached out her hand to the heavenly immortal girl, gesturing for her to hand over her phone. The fairy girl pointed to the car key on the table next to her and said, "Isn't the key right there? Don't bother the driver." Aunt Lu's outstretched hand showed no intention of retracting, and her attitude was slightly firm. The little girl was very unwilling in her heart, but despite her mother's serious gaze, she dared not disobey and reluctantly handed over her phone. Aunt Lu took the phone and opened it to see that on the SMS interface, her daughter had sent a photo multimedia message to a string of unfamiliar numbers. She tried to maintain a calm tone and asked softly, "Who is this? What does sending a string of characters mean?" "Characters." Upon hearing this, the fairy girl looked at her phone and realized that she had just grabbed it in a panic, but accidentally typed out a string of characters and sent it directly to someone. Aunt Lu was very suspicious that this string of characters was something like a Morse code, and when she saw the photo above of her daughter smiling like a scissor hand, she suddenly became a little wary. "Isn't it under my own nose that my daughter had an early romance with someone? Don't blame Auntie for being so nervous, there are too many bad things in the entertainment industry. My own daughter is also naive and ignorant, who knows who deceived her with sweet words." Feeling her mother's gaze gradually becoming more serious, the little girl only felt her scalp tingling, but still honestly explained. This is Huo Mingjie's number. Mom, you asked me to thank you before, so I went." Upon hearing these words, Aunt Lu felt even more alarmed. For Huo Mingjie, she had a deep impression the first time she saw him. Even though she has seen too many worlds at her age, she can't help but take a few more glances at Huo Mingjie every time she sees him. My old aunt is still struggling, let alone her own daughter who has been saved by others. "Cece, didn't you dislike young men before?" Aunt Lu pretended to be calm, but her eyes were extremely careful as she looked at her daughter, afraid that she might show any signs of something wrong. Upon hearing this, the heavenly immortal girl felt a bit embarrassed and said, "I was too deeply involved in the drama before and was very impolite to him. When I went to thank him, I found that he had a good personality, which made me even more embarrassed." Aunt Lu noticed that her daughter didn't show any unusual emotions when speaking at this moment, and her heart relaxed slightly. It's okay, I think I just had a slight liking for it with Huo Mingjie's face. It's difficult not to be liked, even Aunt Lu herself can't escape. But just looking at the panicked appearance of our daughter just now, we know that her thoughts are not pure either. Let's not talk about my daughter's great career now, let's just say that at her age, her mind is not yet mature, but it's not time for dating. Thinking of this, Aunt Lu immediately put away her phone and said in a deep voice. There is a night play today, so you should take a break when you have time. It's better not to play with your phone. Leave your phone with Mom for now, and I'll give it to you when I have free time later. Upon hearing these words, the heavenly immortal girl suddenly widened her eyes and said pitifully. Don't worry, I still have to chat with my friends and make plans to go out and play together during my free time. Aunt Lu remained unmoved and continued, saying. It's not about confiscating your phone, it's just to prevent you from playing with it and ensure enough rest time. When you have time, the phone will be returned to you. After speaking, her tone softened again and she said. Listen, I'll go cook for you now. Hurry up and rest. After speaking, Aunt Lu stopped looking at her daughter and picked up the car key, then turned around and left, leaving only the heavenly immortal girl standing in place with some anger. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. What is giving blind eyes? You are listening at novelfull.audio. This translator is experiencing an error, please try another translator. Chapter 9. New style. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 New style. When the female lead of the crew, Sister Chang'e, arrived early in the morning with her agent to prepare for the filming, she suddenly realized that the filming venue was particularly lively today. Originally, only the filming and field staff were staying near the venue here, and for some reason, there were many female sex workers crowded in. At this moment, they were pointing excitedly at the other side. This scene is even more exaggerated than when Wu Qilong, who made a guest appearance in the drama, arrived. By the way, this thunderbolt tiger made a guest appearance in this drama as the father of the male lead Ho Yi, Xing Tian. Ho Yi's father was Xingtian, and then he fell in love with Jingwei. I have to admire the screenwriter's imagination. Xu Chang's current agent is still her cousin. Looking at the particularly lively scene at this moment, both of them couldn't help but feel a hint of curiosity. The agent cousin simply mentioned to Sister Chang'e and ran over there, squeezing into the crowd to join in the fun. The little girl couldn't help but feel curious and a bit embarrassed to squeeze past, so she simply stood still and waited, wanting to wait for her own agent cousin to come back and inquire. After waiting for a long time, she never saw her cousin come back. On the contrary, the deputy director with a dark face walked over and shouted a few words loudly, driving everyone around back. The group of female staff members gathered over there, all with a reluctant expression, left step by step and turned back 3 times. It was not until then that Xu Song saw her agent cousin, who seemed to have stolen honey and ran back with a happy face. As soon as she saw her own cousin waiting in place, the agent cousin couldn't hide her excitement and said. What a handsome actor from your crew. Although the name and appearance were not mentioned, when it came to such a handsome actor, Xu Song's first thought came to Huo Mingjie, who had just joined the group a few days ago. Looking at the expression on her cousin's face that she had never seen a man before, Sister Chang'e still felt a bit embarrassed and couldn't help but whisper. Huo Mingjie, when he joined the group a few days ago, he even came to say hello to me. But cousin, you shouldn't show such a behavior, as if you were going to eat someone on the spot. Upon hearing Xu Sing's words, the agent's expression and eyes immediately widened, and he retorted. Isn't that enough? My sister, when did your vision become so high? Upon hearing these words, Xu sang and felt speechless. She admits that Huo Mingjie is indeed the type that attracts women very much, but it's not like that, is it? Is it really because of my years of honing in the entertainment industry that my aesthetic has been elevated to a very high level? As she was thinking this in her heart, she caught a glimpse of a figure in the distance out of sight, and then her gaze suddenly shifted, staring blankly at that side. The agent's cousin followed her gaze and turned her head again, half-jokingly saying, "Look, just now you were so stubborn that you didn't say anything wrong." Upon hearing this, Xu Chang blushed and forced herself to withdraw her gaze. But after a moment, he couldn't help but take another glance towards that side. The figure in the distance is naturally Huo Mingjie. And the reason why he caused such a sensation today is not that he forgot to restrain himself and casually smiled at people over there. But now he has put on a new shape designed by Tao Huanhuan himself, which is truly stunning and unforgettable. I can't help but take a few more glances. The original design of the bright warcraft was a silver armor. But the armor design was a bit peculiar, not to mention, it couldn't be called armor, it was the kind of disheveled cloud shoulder fabric vest. And now the silver armor he is wearing, although not truly iron armor, looks much more exquisite. It should be to highlight the scene where Lingzi is good at escaping, and this armor does not appear heavy. The silver scale armor looks slim and agile, making it a great lining. The cloud shoulder armor slightly rises, and there is a green fluorite waist around the waist, which further highlights Huo Mingjie's tall and slender figure. The makeup on the face is simple, with only a slight embellishment on the eyebrows, and the red sword eyebrows rising. A silver crown tied around the head, with only 2 strands of hair hanging down from the face. Amidst its warm and mellow demeanor, it carries a hint of evil temperament. He only needs to stand over there now, as if transforming into a black hole, attracting all the attention from around him. No wonder when he appeared today, he alarmed so many people in the crew on the side of the filming venue. Director Liang Guoguang also looked at Huo Mingjie from afar, then turned his head and asked his assistant in Mandarin with a Hong Kong flavor. "Who is that handsome guy?" "Our crew's silver spirit," the director's assistant hurriedly said. Lingzi. "I have seen the character design, isn't it this style?" the director continued to ask. "Teacher Fan greeted me before and said he wanted to make some modifications, but I didn't expect the efficiency to be so high." The leader of the makeup team, surnamed Fan, participated in the design of several main characters in the drama. This time, the main modification of Huo Mingjie's design by Tao Huanhuan was also done in advance through gas exchange with this person. Upon hearing this, Liang Guoguang immediately gave a thumbs up and nodded in praise, saying, "Captain Fan is very impressive, and this silver spirit is also very handsome. He not only has no objections to Huo Mingjie's new style, but also extremely likes it." Just a glance from such a distance made Liang Guoguang feel that even if his acting skills were mediocre, as long as his face appeared on the screen, the ratings would have to double and rise. "How many scenes does Lingzi have today?" Upon hearing this, the assistant quickly replied. "Today is a fight between Lingzi and the fire god Zhu Rong. The dialogue in the script for this fight is only half a page, and after editing, it is estimated that all the shots will add up to a few minutes. It may sound easy to have only 1 scene a day, but in reality, fighting scenes are not as good as civil dramas. It requires both imposing pressure and learning movements. A few minutes of filming can't be completed in half a day." Director Liang Guoguang nodded and said, "Okay, let's go ahead and get ready to shoot in 20 minutes. The assistant quickly responded, turned around, and began to arrange the scene to notify the actors to prepare. The staff of the lighting, photography, and radio groups were in place, and Huo Mingjie was pulled aside. The staff were preparing to hang Weiye for him and play opposite roles with Huo Mingjie. Zhong, who played the fire god Zhu Rong in the play, was also ready. The staff began to disperse nearby unrelated personnel and turned on the camera. The field manager rushed to the camera with a recording board in hand and shouted out the camera information loudly. The 27th scene of Jingwei Reclamation, the first item. With a crisp thud, Liang Guoguang, who was sitting in front of the camera, raised his horn and shouted loudly. "Action! The filming has officially started." End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Explosive acting. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Chapter 10 Explosive acting. This scene is about the antagonist fire god Zhu Rong, who is paranoid and fierce in the early stage, and is determined to eliminate demons at all costs. In order to kill the old ghost, Xingtian's servant, who has been hiding in the misty ghost forest for many years, he used the two wizards and music officials, Su Nu and her childhood sweetheart, Li Luo, who worshipped the gods, to break the restrictions of the misty ghost forest. In order to save his innocent daughter, Mingjie, who was not good at fighting, chased after him at all costs. After a confrontation with Zhu Rong's words, he directly took action, and finally, the old ghost's action made the fire god Zhu Rong retreat. As soon as director Liang Guoguang started shouting, several big men from the Weiya group all exerted force and forcefully pulled the pressure steel wire backwards. Huo Mingjie was suppressed and his body instantly took off. Almost subconsciously, Huo Mingjie activated the warm current in his body and instinctively performed the golden goose technique. The golden finger has long been reminded that due to differences in worldview, the effectiveness of skills may vary, far from reaching the level described in the book, where they can soar up one or even several zhang in the air. Previously, he jumped off a platform that was 3 or 4 meters high, but only took a false step in the air. After landing, he even made Huo Mingjie stumble slightly and almost couldn't stand firm. But at this moment, with the blessing of Weiya on his body, Huo Mingjie was able to use the golden wild goose technique when his body took off, which happened to be able to borrow power from the air. I saw him soaring in the air, then using the golden wild goose technique to adjust his body shape. After passing through the sky, he floated down and stood still, his eyes fixed on the fire god Zhu Rong in front of him, showing a resolute expression. The graceful and beautiful movements are eye-catching. Yin Zhong, who was in the play, couldn't help but nod inwardly as he watched Huo Mingjie's beautiful and graceful movements. Nowadays, young people are so skilled, even those Hong Kong martial artists from the past rarely have such handsome and beautiful movements. At this moment, Yin Zhong had other chaotic thoughts in his heart, but when he looked up at Huo Mingjie and their eyes intertwined, his mind suddenly went blank for some reason. Then, almost in an instant, under the influence of a mysterious force, Yin Zhong's mixed thoughts completely disappeared from his heart, his eyes suddenly became extremely fierce, and his momentum suddenly became domineering and domineering. At this point, he had already forgotten his identity as actor Yin Zhong and instead became one of the 4 gods of the heavenly realm, holding the vermilion bird flag and making the demons of the world tremble with fear. It's been 1,000 years, and I can't believe that you, the shining monster, have turned into a human. The powerful voice of the fire god Zhu Rong rang out, his eyes fixed on the silver spirit played by Huo Mingjie. The scorching and domineering aura, as if it could burn everything, rushed towards the silver spirit. In Zhu Rong's eyes, there was a look of disdain and disdain. As one of the 4 gods in the heavenly realm, the fire god Zhu Rong, even the bright warcraft, one of the 10 great warcraft, is nothing more in his eyes. Huo Mingjie was shocked by this domineering and imposing aura, and his pupils shrank, revealing a hint of fear. He instinctively took a step back. With a majestic and domineering demeanor all around, it doesn't seem like acting. It's clear that the fire god has descended to earth. Good guy, is this the acting skills of the old actors? Huo Mingjie knew that he seemed to be under pressure now, but since he didn't hear the director shout cut, he couldn't stop. With such thoughts in his heart, he simply turned his heart and fully devoted himself to the role, fully exerting his acting skills. Mingjie took a deep breath, and the fear on her face disappeared. Her eyes became even more indignant and resolute. She took a step forward and angrily rebuked. Zhu Rong, why did you bring the innocent woman into the struggle in your divine realm? Upon hearing these words, the fire god Zhu Rong's eyes suddenly turned cold and he shouted sternly. What are you talking about, little pudding? What kind of struggle in the divine realm? I am a heavenly god, and now I am saving those mortals and eliminating your demons. Mingjie's eyes were firm and resolute, looking straight at the fire god Zhu Rong, and he retorted. Don't think I don't know. The energy of the god of war that disappeared 1,000 years ago has been revived, but your heavenly gods allow evil spirits to harm the human world. I also see that the power of Tianwei is weakening. All of this proves that your divine realm is engaged in the same struggles as 1,000 years ago. 1,000 years ago, there was a struggle in the divine realm, and the god of war, Xing Tian, was killed. He sealed the power of the god of war in the Holy Spirit stone and hid it inside his son Houyi's body. Emperor Yan was sealed, and the great villain Tian Shaniha stole the throne of the heavenly emperor. He also blamed the war god Xing Tian for all the crimes, which marked the beginning of the story. Huo Mingjie listened to Yin Lingzi's answer, his eyes narrowed, and his face twitched slightly, revealing the anger and resentment of being pointed out. But after a moment, he suddenly burst out laughing again. Haha, so you know so much. Originally, my god of fire wanted you to live a few more days, but you are here repeatedly slandering the most prestigious god between heaven and earth. Then no wonder I'm taking care of you. As soon as the words fell, the terrifying aura emanating from the fire god Zhu Rong rose again, and in a daze, there seemed to be a boundless fire burning behind him. At this point, Huo Mingjie, who had already fully invested himself, also fully demonstrated his wild acting skills, desperately carrying the show. Not only did he not flinch at all, but his gaze became even more resolute and resolute. With a fierce wave of his hand, he angrily said, I don't want to get caught up in the struggles of the gods, humans, and demons. I just want to leave this place far away with my innocent daughter. The fire god Zhu Rong suddenly sneered, with a fierce killing intent flashing in his eyes. With a sudden extension of his right hand, he wanted to summon the divine weapon, the vermilion bird flag, to take action. At this moment, director Liang Guoguang in front of the camera slammed his thigh and shouted loudly. Cut! With a cut from the director, he immediately awakened the actor Yin Zhong who had completely entered the scene, and in an instant, he withdrew from the character. Yin Zhong stood still and instinctively began to reminisce about his acting just now. This feeling is really smooth. All kinds of emotions are in place, and the lines are blurted out. It doesn't seem like it's actually a performance, as if I'm really the fire god Zhurong. Even when I saw the character Yin Lingzi played by Huo Mingjie across from me, I had an inexplicable urge to take action at this moment. Director Liang Guoguang's face slightly turned red, showing some excitement. The scene just now, although only a few minutes long, was almost the most exciting one he had personally produced in his career. Yin Zhong's portrayal of the fire god Zhu Rong is impeccable in both emotions and aura. His acting skills are incredibly explosive, and he feels like a fire god descending in a daze. Moreover, even Huo Mingjie, who played against him, was outstanding in martial arts and did not miss out on literary performances. Especially when he first faced the fire god Zhu Rong, his subconscious fear and retreat transformed into determination and determination. This is completely a portrayal of Yin Lingzi, who is not good at fighting and often runs away in times of trouble. Only a simple woman can make him work hard. Director Liang Guoguang suppressed his excitement, swallowed his saliva, and raised his loudspeaker, shouting loudly. Okay, keep the actor's emotions. Where are the props? Send the vermilion bird flag over quickly. End of this chapter.